Okay, great.
Hello and welcome to another episode of 100 Days and Beyond. Today we got a really fascinating group called Octillion and Octillion Capital Partners. We've got one of the co-founders, Ayo. Ayo's has had a busy day and continues to have a busy day in his world. And it's quite an interesting world that he comes from. It's all about innovation and in entrepreneurship, and if you look at 100 Days and Beyond, and all the things that we do within growing, developing, acquiring, and also looking at helping people along the way. I think Ayo is probably him and his team are probably good examples of thinking outside the box. I think that's one of the things, and thinking about new and innovative ways of going to market. So welcome, Ayo. I'd like if possible, if you could give us a bit of an intro, share a bit of a story of how you got to where you got to, and let's see how it goes. And I'll be chipping in every now and then, asking you more questions. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on the show. You asked for an intro, so I will do exactly that. I'll do my best. So I think this was back in 2019, and I'm trying to fast forward. I was working for a family office, but I was working in the non-profit arm of the family office, so doing their digital transformation as well as some fundraising activities for the organization. And basically, it was a big success. But before we obviously got to that point, there was a lot of work to be done. The organization didn't have any processes in place. There was no structure. There were no systems. It was just chaos, to be honest. And I think a lot of people were put off with working with the NPO because they could sense this. If your house is not in order, typically people can sense it and then they stay away. So I came in there fresh out of business school, naive, which I think is sometimes just fantastic to have, because then again, you're not put off by the potential, or you're not scared of, let's say, potential probability for failure. And came in there and I was just diligently working. First thing I did was basically just identify just bottlenecks with a questionnaire, how a thing is currently being done, answer the question, and then taking that as a working template to improve on existing strategies. Long story short, not to spend too much time on this part, is that one of the things that the organization was doing was that they would host this competition at the start, I think like in the summer period, where they would get a lot of schools from different boroughs. And what they had to do was they had to more or less like organize the logistics in terms of picking up these kids to get to these competitions. And it would take them maybe 2 to 3 months to organize logistics. And for me, I just felt like that was just a big waste of time, and just always looking for a way to improve on current processes. I then came up with this algorithm that basically would systematize the picking of schools, and then also just automatically work out the best routes to take. So by taking the longitude, the latitude details of each of the different boroughs and then putting it into the system, this algorithm would then obviously crunch the data, work out the best route, and then spit out 5, 6, 7, 8 schools, and also the route to take. So pick this one up first. So basically that resulted in taking more or less in a process that was taking, let's say, 2 to 3 months, to something that's basically done in 10 minutes now. So while I was doing that, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, wow, there's a lot of innovation happening on here, and I don't necessarily think I have all the skills that I would like to have. So I think I need to study further. And this was in 2017. I did my first master's in management, and my bachelor's is in management as well. So I felt like I had this overlap of knowledge. And what I then did was like, look, I need to specialize in something, and I would like to specialize in innovation and entrepreneurship, innovation and electronic business, because I just felt like that was where the world was going to. So I did another master's, came back to the UK, did another master's, and then while I was doing that, I was obviously introduced to new courses, new modules, so things like intellectual property, digital creativity, and new media management. I had to do HR and stats and all the boring stuff that I've done before, but the new topics, as I've mentioned, and things like in the knowledge economy, it really just opened my eyes, and I was extremely fascinated with some of these things. I did ethics, yeah, some really interesting stuff. Anyway, fast forward to the last term, I was getting into like ecom. I was looking at ecom companies, obviously doing some stuff on Amazon. I was doing some research. Basically, I was trying to find a dissertation topic, and I submitted some stuff to my supervisor at the time, and then she basically just vetoed all my ideas. So I had to find something completely different, not related to ecom. So I ended up writing something around digital creativity. Sorry, I ended up writing something about disruptive innovation in the higher education sector, with a focus on UK universities as my case study. Um, and but at the same time, while I was doing that, I was still really fascinated on this ecom world and the FMCG industry. I like FMCG typically because I like the tangible nature of like feeling my products. Like I love touching this. This is a brand that I'm drinking now. It's called Perfect Ted, but one of the brands that we have, which I'll come on to soon, I just like the tangible nature of like holding on to the actual product. It just does something for me that, let's say, a SaaS business can't do, because I can't, while I can feel the impact of the technology, I can't actually physically hold it. It's intangible. Um, so I was like, as I said, I was writing the my thesis, and then at the same time, I started writing this business plan. Because I'd come across this concept of a search fund, which is basically a subset of private equity. And when I was younger, I did an internship with a private equity firm, so I really like the concept of taking something or investing in a ready-made business and then basically just making it better, optimizing it for growth. So with this love of entrepreneurship, with this interest in finance, and also with this kind of focus on FMCG, just said, why don't we just like blend everything together? And that was basically how Octillion was formed. So Octillion actually started off as a search fund, just looking to basically buy one company, but through refinement, reiteration, hooking up with my business partner KC, we've then now turned that around and turned it into basically a CPG impact company, conglomerate company, or soon to be conglomerate company, I hope, that's looking to acquire and build clean consumer brands in food and beverage and in the health and beauty space. And by clean, I just mean things that are good for you. So high in protein, low carbs, no preservatives, no additives, just a clean source of energy to feel the best you. So as well as skincare. By skincare for clean, I just mean a clean ingredient list, as well as just dispelling any sorts of myths around that. But yeah, so I think the goal with Octillion basically is just to acquire, operate, and grow 20 FMCG brands in those aforementioned verticals. And currently, right now, we have one, but one that has two sub brands underneath it. So, which is obviously Lean Caffeine, and then we're working on acquiring some other brands as we speak. So, I hope that is a suitable introduction.
Yeah, it's a very good introduction, and it's quite comprehensive. And I'm just listening and hearing about your preference to something that's tangible versus something that's like a SaaS or a software product, a fintech, and all the glamorous type of brands, if you like, or not technologies. And having studied digital in the digital space, I mean, if I look at I'm just looking at your profile, and it says, I mean, LinkedIn says that you have a business innovation with electronic business. So you're quite well aware of all aspects digital. But I'm sure even though it's a tangible product, it must be quite interesting to mix that with the digital space that we live in, because you can't move a product without being digitally set up. So that, I'm sure that comes in very handy in terms of moving your product, obtaining the right kind of products and so on. But just tell me a little bit more. I mean, I'm quite intrigued by this lean caffeine. What is that? I mean, that's just that's interesting. That's your first acquisition,
Yes.
with the two brands. So with the lean caffeine and the clean and pure, that's very interesting, because caffeine has sometimes got good reviews and other times not, and it's quite an interesting place to go as your first one.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the interesting thing is, before we acquired Linkafine, we looked at over 300 opportunities. Because again, we take, I think this is something that I double down as. I take a value-based approach to just investing in general. So looking for undervalued assets or overlooked assets, and then just acquiring them for the right price. And I think one of the benefits that we had is that because we hadn't made an acquisition, and then we were basically looking in at what other people were doing. People were paying crazy multiples at the time. It was basically a seller's market then. But obviously, because we kept our discipline on, we were able to acquire the brand for a decent multiple. But Lean Caffeine, it was very interesting with how things progressed with Lean Caffeine, because we actually came across Lean Caffeine in our first 100. So as I said, we looked at over 300. So we came across Lean Caffeine initially, but at the time, our mission wasn't really clear. We were, as I said, looking to buy an e-com business, but that's very, very general. That's not specific. As well as it just like, okay, you buy an e-commerce business, what next? Yeah, you might grow the business, but like, why are you really looking to buy a business? What are you really looking to achieve? And I think we had to find a bigger problem. And the problem that we thought, or we looked into, was just, okay, let's look at our lives. I try to live a very healthy lifestyle, not perfect. But I'm very aware of what I'm consuming, what I'm eating, and just what's going in my body, really. And then my business partner, he had an even bigger reason to live a healthier lifestyle, just because of previous health scares. And just looking at the macro trends, like obesity has nearly tripled since 1975. I think around 25% of adults are obese or overweight. And basically, there's a massive food epidemic, with a lot of the foods that we're eating being controlled by just the massive conglomerates. So P&G, Unilever, Kellogg, some of these brands, Nestle. I think Nestle even had, around 40% of Nestle sales are high in sugars and preservatives and additives. I think there's actually something going on with between them and Share Action, in terms of looking to push for basically a healthier product portfolio, basically. But all this saying is that there's a massive food epidemic, and I think that's one of the reasons why the rates of anxiety and depression have also increased. Because if you think about it, the old adage is, you are what you eat. So if you're eating a lot of unhealthy, negative, bad food, that's going to play a role in just feeling down, fatigued, lethargic, bloated. It's just going to have a real impact on you. And when I go to the shops, one of the things that I do is I'm just looking at people and looking at their shopping baskets, and you can typically tell the type of person that you're dealing with by just looking at the shopping baskets. It's kind of ethnographic research. But anyway, this problem was basically obvious now. So the combination of how we want to live our lives, plus also how we think people should live their lives, just but may not be able to, just because of one, being brainwashed really by incumbents, is the massive problem. And then we're using M&A as the tool to tackle that problem. by acquiring clean, good for you consumer brands. And when that was clear, right, it was just clear that Linkafine was a very good acquisition opportunity for us, and it should be our genesis, because the way that the previous founder Jamie had built the brand was just all around that, because his father had dementia, and as a way for him to prevent himself from getting dementia, he went on this research rampage and came across obviously coffee as a benefit to helping you with your intermittent fasting, which was obviously the diet that he stumbled upon to help him with his I would say solution for reducing his risk of getting dementia. So he loves coffee. He's an Aussie guy, and Australians, just like Italians, they love their coffee. So with that being said, we read the story, we met him, we tried the product. I always buy the product before anything because I just need to, like I said, taste it, get a feel for it. And the funny thing is that I'm not necessarily even really a big coffee drinker myself. It's actually quite funny. But before we made the acquisition, I went to about like 20, 30 coffee locations just trying different coffees. I was buzzing on coffee. I remember one Saturday I was like wired. Anyway, so we looked at the opportunity obviously in more detail. We did our homework. We identified a plan, and then we acquired the business. And now we're obviously operating the business. And as the name suggests, Linkafine, we think, and also clean and pure. It's a little bit of a headache because, again, like, what does the brand really do? So how we've now described it is Linkafine is basically a functional nutrition brand that sells clean coffees. So by clean, I mean microtoxin-free coffees, no heavy metal coffees, no pesticides in our coffees. So it's basically coffee without the jitters. It provides a smooth, consistent drinking experience. And we have obviously our other products that are good for you. So like our bone broth, our MCT oil powder that we're going to be launching very soon, decaf coffee, some liposomal, and some other good for you products. But yeah, that's basically a little bit about Linkafine.
And that's fascinating. So yeah, not being a coffee drinker, buying your first acquisition as a that's very interesting. So I just tell me about your, let's call it your life sets of values and your outlook, because what's interesting to me is that different people see the world. You got a different lenses through which you look, and some people approach what they perceive as problems out in the market, and they perceive those problems as something that is in someone else's control. You seem to be you call him Casey. It's Kunle Campbell. You seem to say, you know what? We're not going to blame anybody else, but we're going to be part of the solution. So there's one way to do it, and that's to glue yourself to a road, or to throw canned tomato sauce at high value paintings. And that's one way to deal with something that you feel passionate about. I don't think it's the right way, but that's a way. I think the better way is the way you're doing it. You're saying there are problems out there, and let's do there are things. I mean, health is a massive thing. The biggest killer of human beings is not the climate change or anything like that. It's just pure bad eating and health, and I think it's got and it all ends up with something like cardiac arrest or cardiovascular diseases and so on. So and tackling clean and really healthy FMCG, that type of thing, I think that's a feather in your cap, and I quite like that as an approach. So tell me a bit about your philosophy. Is this something that you sort of always felt, or is it really just more clarity that you've got now that you never had before? It seems to be more of a journey to me, and to become more clear in who you are and what you stand for. That's what I'm getting from from speaking to you now and also in the past? Give us a bit of an insight into you as a person.
Yeah, I think for me, right, like I'm a Stoic by nature. I subscribe to the philosophy of Stoicism, and when you mention like values and things like that, like for me, I'm just looking to develop certain values such as honesty, benevolence, integrity, wisdom, perseverance, and and compassion, I believe. I think from in terms of like exploration and then coming on this journey, I love the word that you use, journey. Is it's been a gradual process. Like I remember when I was younger, I wanted to be a footballer. I wanted to, I'm a massive football fan. I play and I watch. And when I was younger, you obviously have this bundle of energy, but when I went to school and then they started to teach me about the importance of diet and also just doing my own reading as to okay, what's a day in the life of a footballer? I remember I was on this I think I was on this website. I can't remember what's called. I think it's like 442 or something like that. And it was talking about one of the footballers, my favorite footballers, Iniesta, and then there's another player called Yaya Toure that I really like, and I think, and also Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and one other guy called Karim Benzema. So I really like those type of players. But anyway, I remember I was just online, and then it just followed this guy's day, and then he talks about like what he ate, how much water he drank. And then I watched some documentaries about Cristiano Ronaldo, which maybe you may or may not have seen. And you basically just see how this guy lives, right? And he is the embodiment of just health. Well, let me just say
Yes.
embodiment of health, because obviously he's a sportsman. So I've always kind of known of the importance of diet. And on the flip side, I had a sister, or have a sister, and she was diabetic. She is diabetic. And I obviously see the impact that just not eating right has played. She's doing much better now, but I know exactly what she had to go through. And obviously, being her brother, I could also feel that sort of pain. So I've always kind of known, but then when you go into, as you grow up, as you age, as you begin to just kind of like realize how the world works, and then, as I said, as I just go into stores and I see what is actually out there, you're able to then kind of like paint a picture and then get the idea and then just see how big the problem is. Highly processed foods, again, because the model of the big conglomerates is based on retention and repeat purchase, they're going to obviously do things that will allow for that. So increasing things like preservatives, additives, sugar into your food. Like one of the most successful companies is Coca-Cola. One of the most unhealthy drinks to drink is Coca-Cola. So so it's actually fairly simple when you just actually think about it. But for me, it's again, it's not like I'm righteous, or I claim, or I don't eat unhealthy food. I definitely do, but in moderation. But I'm very much aware that a lot of people do not exercise moderation, and also just some people are just not aware in general of, okay, this might say I don't know, I have low sugar or no sugar at all, but okay, it doesn't actually have any sugar. It has something worse than sugar. But again, because the ingredients are not necessarily clear, and you don't have that education, it's getting a bit better now because of the rise of social media. So you're seeing a lot of people coming out. So you have guys like, let's say in the Bulletproof Coffee world, you have people like Dave Asprey coming out. And then you have some other kind of figureheads in the space. So what we're looking to do at some point, I think, if we had our way at some point, I think that content is obviously very, very important to provide this education, but it has to be done in the format of edutainment. And if you can, let's say, for example, acquire a media house that their job is to more or less just churn out content around this. So dispelling a lot of food myths, but also obviously promoting some of our brands that actually can be a better replacement I think it's a fantastic way to kill two birds with one stone. One is obviously educating the market, and then two is selling the product.
Yeah, I like the way things are going, but I think there's three legs to that message today, and that falls within the influencer business model, if you like. And that's the edutainment makes sense. So I think there's three elements to it, and the one is there needs to be an educational component to it, but people don't just want to be sitting educated all the time. People don't just want to be entertained all the time. And then over and above, I think there's a big need in today's society specifically because we become so disconnected. There's a new sort of realization that us as human beings, we need connection, we need community, and we need authenticity in terms of who we are and what we represent as people and human beings. I think people are going back to a different set of values that they didn't necessarily have, that disappeared for a number of years, and we can see the results of it. I mean, the world's in a bit of chaos at the moment, and I think if you think about the way to get a message across is literally those three things. You've got to educate, you've got to entertain, but you've also got to build community. And if you look at like the guys like what's his name? Is it Andrew Huberman?
Yeah, Andrew Huberman. Yeah.
I mean, he's pretty good in terms of the way he pushes out a really solid message from a strong educational background. So he's highly credible, but he's incredibly approachable, and he makes things that are complicated, he makes it easy for a lot of people to understand. He uses big words, but in fact you don't feel like awkward because you've listened to one of his events or whatever it is he's doing. But you end up following a guy like that, and if he gives some advice, you tend to take that as credible. There's a lot of guys out there that are putting out information and things that are not credible. So there's a lot of garbage out there as well. And as a guy that understands e-commerce and the digital aspects and so on, and then they're now promoting healthy lifestyle, would you share that as a way to market, as a way to really engage with audiences today? I mean, you've studied this stuff. I mean, maybe give me your view on that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that last point on just building community. Typically, that's the only way you can achieve, I'd say, scale, is that you have a lot of people, or you've gathered a subset of people that actually just believe in your message, and now they are looking to basically repurpose that message and spread it across. So in terms of building community, and as well as also providing entertainment, as well as the informative side of things, it's a fantastic trifecta for success. And you're 100% right in that. Andrew Huberman does that. It's what I think, if you actually think about it, it's what makes a podcast successful, especially with the short form content that we're going into. Like, you look at the likes of like Joe Rogan. It's he provides a lot of information because he's a very smart guy. He's able to understand a lot of different topics and ask great questions. He brings on people that have lived interesting and varied lives, and it's as you said, it's easy to consume, it's easy to digest. You may not necessarily get through one sitting, but you can pause it, come back to it, take what you need from it, and then move again. And he's built a community around that, which is basically the subscribers that obviously subscribe to that. So also with the influencer, the influencer point that you made, that again is just community. You're following this person because you like them, and then they say something, and then you basically just like follow because obviously you aspire to be like that.
Yeah, I love that as a concept, and I think for me that's a nice breakthrough that's happened over the last few years, as opposed to all the, at one stage, social media really became a trash heap, and now you have people differentiating themselves very, very nicely. I mean, it's a good contrast. In fact, Joe Rogan is not really an expert at anything. Quite frankly, I mean, he's a really good interviewer, but he's not necessarily an expert in a lot of things. So he has a lot of good opinions about things, but he does bring in really good experts. And in that way, he's become an influencer because he becomes the conduit to information. He's entertaining, and he's built a community. So again, the trifecta, as you call it, is there. Where Huberman he's his own party, if you like. He's all education and entertainment, and obviously he's building a following and a community. So it's very interesting. You can choose these days as a creator. You can create whatever you like. Coming back to the M&A side of things, as we come to sort of the end of the podcast, I want to just get sort of a few pointers from you from a company and Octillion Capital Partners. What kind of businesses are you looking to engage with, and sort of what is your process that you follow?
Okay. Yeah, our process is pretty simple. You can actually start the process by just going onto our website, and then on our website we have a tab called Sell Your Brand. That Sell Your Brand is basically just a form where you can just fill out some quick fire questions to give us a little bit of information around like your brand and if we're a good fit. If we're not a good fit, you probably will not pass that questionnaire because there's some commands that basically just stop you from progressing. So for example, we typically tend to look at businesses that are 3 years plus. So if you say, oh, you're 2 years old, it just stops. If you're in certain sectors outside food and beverage and health and beauty, you don't go further. So it's a way of not wasting anyone's time. But should you somehow progress with that application and you're not necessarily a fit for us, doesn't mean we just kick you to the curb. We might pass it on to other potential parties that might be interested. But the type of companies we are looking for, as I said, are companies operating in the food and beverage space as well as in the health and beauty space. I'd say we're happy to look at either company. We typically look at companies in the range of 1 to 5 million. We're looking for companies to at least have 20% net profits. That's probably around the food and bev. We're hoping that skincare is a little bit higher margin. In terms of, we're looking for simple to operate to execute, so Warren Buffett style methodology for assessing a business. So basically saying any fool can run this business because at some point there will be a fool running the business. We're looking for businesses that have begun their path towards sustainability. Now, again, not saying you have to be all the way sustainable, but you're just making strides to become more sustainable, whether that be through your packaging or whether that be through a sale on additional items. So, for example, maybe like you're planting trees, or you're just your environmental contributions post sale. We're looking for companies in, I would say, Europe and the US, so predominantly the UK, because obviously that's where we're based, but happy to look across the pond because it's an e-commerce business, and as long as it doesn't have massive liabilities and fixed assets, it's something that we can work on. So that's kind of like the profile. I'm happy to share our acquisition criteria with you as well, should you or anyone maybe want it. So yeah, those are the type of companies that we're looking for. Typically, yeah.
And so it's not startups. So it's really somebody who has gone through the first few growth pains. They've found a product market fit to a certain extent. They now are looking for either an exit or a partner to come in, or they want to carry on with their passion, but they realize that they can't do it alone, and they bring guys like you in to come and assist them. So that's what I'm getting from what you just said.
Exactly. Perfectly said. I think the other thing is, as you said, maybe it's outgrown them. So I think that was the case with Link Caffeine. Just wanted to do something else because it was coming a bit of to be very honest with you, a pain to manage with a very small team. So passing it on to someone else that can take it to that next level was maybe just the right thing to do. And we always look to build on the legacy of the original founder, but also looking to innovate and improve the business in different ways. So yeah, we're looking for businesses that basically have found that product market fit. We're looking for lifestyle category creating businesses that don't necessarily know the category creating.
So just then, if I move it more to a personal side of things, and you've shared your Stoic philosophy and so on. But tell us a bit like family, and I mean you're based in the UK, and I bet you travel quite a lot, etc. And you're always in meetings, and I know whenever I try to speak to you, you know that you just finished a meeting and you're just about always going into the next one. So you're a busy guy. Do you think there's such a thing as work-life balance? Do you think that it's possible to have both, or is it all work at this stage of your life and rest later, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I was actually thinking about that this morning, because on my way to the office, I just caught up with someone, and then they mentioned that they just left their job, just basically just lack of fulfillment. And I've had a lot of these conversations over the last month with just various friends and peers, and for me, that just opened up my eyes, or I kind of already realized, but I'm like, look, it's not considered work when you're working on your passion. Now, again, that's not to say that you don't actually have to sacrifice a bit more in terms of like your time, but it's not mundane. I'm not building someone else's dream. I'm building my own dream. And I think I try to achieve some balance, but at this present moment in time, some days can be I would say more skewed towards work than it is towards more personal stuff. But I think that's to be accepted. To be very honest with you, extraordinary results require extraordinary effort, and that's just the price we're willing to pay for now. Now, as obviously the business grows and we bring more people on, then I'm not saying you necessarily like can take your foot off the pedal, because again, it's very hard to get on. It's easy to get onto the top of the mountain, but even harder to stay on there. And we're not even anywhere near there. But you can start to more or less like fit your life around your work rather than the other way around, which is what I think a lot of people are actually starting to realize with the post-COVID crisis, in that I can do what I need to do as well as still have a very good personal life. Now, I think when you're trying to buy 20 businesses, that might be a little bit harder. But with the right team in place, with the right systems in place, I think we'll give it a shot.
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. So as we finish, I mean, I want to ask you if you have one or two golden nuggets to share for the audience, and then we'll bring the podcast to a close. But if you got one or two sort of wisdom elements to share, that'd be great, and that I'm quite keen to hear that.
Yeah, I don't consider myself a wise guy, but like one I would say is always bet on yourself. I think you never lose when you bet on yourself, when you invest in yourself. No one can ever take that away from you. And I would just say, like, only worry about the things that you can actually control and forget about the rest. Just focus on what you can actually have an impact on, and the rest is just more or less like a state of mind. It's as the Stoics say, it's not the problem, but more so your reaction to the problem. Those are my two nuggets.
That's very wise. That's very wise. And I think if we look around us, I think there's a lot of reactivity, and there's a lot of polarization that's happening. And it's just becoming quite a fascinating world, and things are never slowing down. It doesn't seem like that at all. Just everything's speeding up, new technologies and so on. Ayo, thank you very much. I really do appreciate your sharing your life and your business and all that with us today. And please do come back. Do join us again. I'd love to see what happens next in your journey. And then thank you to the audience. So thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast 100 Days and Beyond. Maybe just if you do get a gap, have a look at Octillion Capital Partners. They have a really unique way of taking on the market and a really good way of I think approaching what is really a crisis in terms of health and so on, and doing something positive about it. And I quite like that. And that's definitely the kind of organization I would support. From a ethical and moral point of view, I think that for me makes a lot of sense. Ayo, thank you very much. I don't know if you want to say goodbye, but I do appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a real pleasure just to catch up again. And yeah, anyone listening, thank you very much for listening, and please feel free to check us out and subscribe to Lean Caffeine, please.
Okay, subscribe to Lean Caffeine. Yes, I would. I'm definitely going to do that. I'll be jumping on and taking it from there. Have a super day. I know you're going to jump into another meeting, and all the best. And regards to Casey as well.
I will do. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.